Greensboro is a city in the U.S. state of North Carolina. It is the third largest city by population in North Carolina and the county seat and largest city in Guilford County and the surrounding Piedmont Triad metropolitan region. According to the 2012 U.S. Census estimate, Greensboro's population is 277,080. Three major interstate highways in the Piedmont region of central North Carolina were built to intersect at this city. In 2003, the previous Greensboro-Winston-Salem High Point Metropolitan Statistical Area was redefined by the U.S. Office of Management and Budget. This region was separated into the Greensboro High Point MSA and the Winston-Salem MSA. The 2010 population for the Greensboro High Point MSA was 723,801. The combined statistical area of Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, popularly referred to as the Piedmont Triad, had a population of 1,599,477. In 1808, Greensboro was planned around the central courthouse square to succeed Guilford Courthouse as the county seat. This county courts were thus placed closer to the geographical center of the county, a location more easily reached at the time by the majority of the county's citizens, who depended on horse and foot for travel. Early history. At the time of European encounter, the inhabitants of the area that became Greensboro were a Siouan-speaking people called the Saura. Other indigenous cultures had occupied this area for thousands of years, typically settling along the waterways, as did the early settlers. Quaker migrants from Pennsylvania, by way of Maryland, arrived at Cape Fear in about 1750. The new settlers began organized religious services affiliated with the Cane Creek Friends meeting in Snow Camp. In 1751, 3 years later, 40 Quaker families were granted approval to establish New Garden monthly meeting. The settlement grew rapidly during the next 3 years, adding members from as far away as Nantucket Island in Massachusetts. It soon became the most important Quaker community in the North Carolina and mother of several other Quaker meetings that were established in the state and west of the Appalachians. After the American Revolutionary War, the city of Greensboro was named for Major General Nathaniel Greene, commander of the rebel American forces at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse on March 15, 1781. Although the Americans lost the battle, Greene's forces inflicted heavy casualties on the British Army of General Charles Cornwallis. Following this battle, Cornwallis withdrew his troops to a British coastal base in Wilmington, North Carolina. Greensboro was established near the geographic center of Guilford County, on land that was an unbroken forest with thick undergrowth of huckleberry bushes that bore finely flavored fruit. Property for the future village was purchased from the Saura for $98. 3 north-south streets were laid out intersecting with 3 east-west states. The courthouse was built at the center of the intersection of Elm and Market Streets. By 1821, the town was home to 369 residents. In the early 1840s, Greensboro was designated by the state government as one of the stops on a new railroad line, at the request of Governor John Motley Moorhead, whose plantation, Landwood, was in Greensboro. Stimulated by rail traffic and improved access to markets, the city grew substantially, soon becoming known as the Gate City due to its role as a transportation hub for the Piedmont The railroads transported goods to and from the cotton textile mills. Many of the manufacturers developed workers' housing in mill villages near the facilities. Textile companies and related businesses continued into the 21st century, when most went bankrupt, reorganized, and/or merged with other companies as textile manufacturing jobs moved offshore. Greensboro is still a major center of the textile industry, with the main offices of International Textile Group, Galian Amp, Lord, Unify, and VF Corporation. Rail traffic continues to be important for the city's economy, as Greensboro serves as a major regional freight hub. In addition, 4 Amtrak passenger trains stop in Greensboro daily on the main Norfolk Southern line between Washington and New Orleans by way of Atlanta. Though the city developed slowly, early wealth generated in the 18th and 19th centuries from cotton trade and merchandising resulted in owners constructing several notable buildings. The earliest, later named Blandwood Mansion and Gardens, was built by a planter in 1795. Additions to this residence in 1846, designed by Alexander Jackson Davises of New York City, made the house influential as America's earliest Tuscan-style villa. It has been designated as a National Historic Landmark. Other significant plantation houses and estates were developed, including Dunleith, designed by Samuel Sloan Belknap, and a Bumpastroy House. Since the late 20th century, the latter has been adapted and operates as a private inn. American Civil War. In last days of the Confederacy, many of the residents of the Piedmont and western areas of the state were Unionist, and Guilford County did not vote for secession. But, once North Carolina joined the Confederacy, some citizens joined the Confederate cause, forming such infantry units as the Guilford Grays to fight in the American Civil War. From 1861 to March 1865, the city was relatively untouched by the war, although residents had to deal with the regional shortages of clothing, medicines, and other items caused by the U.S. naval blockade of the South. In the final weeks of the war, Greensboro played a unique role in the last days of the Confederate government. In April 1865, General P.G.T. Beauregard was instructed by the commanding officer of the Army of Tennessee, General Joseph E. Johnston, to prepare for a defense of the city. During this time, Confederate President Jefferson Davis and the remaining members of the Confederate cabinet had evacuated the Confederate capital in Richmond, Virginia, and moved south to Danville, Virginia. When Union cavalry threatened Danville, Davis and his cabinet managed to escape by train and reassembled in Greensboro on April 11, 1865. While in the city, Davis and his cabinet decided to try to escape overseas in order to avoid capture by the victorious Union forces. They left Greensboro and separated. Greensboro is notable as the last place where the entire Confederate government met as a group. It is considered the final capital city of the Confederacy. At nearly the same time, Governor Zebulon B. Vance fled Raleigh, the capital of North Carolina, before the forces of Union General William Tecumseh Sherman swept the city. For a brief period beginning April 16, 1865, he and other officials maintained the state capital in Greensboro. Governor Vance proclaimed the North Carolina Surrender Declaration on April 28, 1865. Later, Vance surrendered to Union officials in the parlor of Blandwood Mansion. Historian Blackwell Robinson wrote, Greensboro witnessed not only the demise of the Confederacy but also that of the old civil government of the state. Once surrender negotiations were completed at Bennett Place, between General Johnston and General Sherman on April 26, 1865, Confederate soldiers in Greensboro stacked their arms and received the paroles, and headed for home. industrialization and growth. After the war, investors worked to restore the textile mills and related industry. In the 1890s, the city continued to attract attention from northern industrialists, including Moses and Caesar Cohn of Baltimore, Maryland. The Cohn brothers established large-scale textile plants, changing Greensboro from a village to a city within a decade. By 1900, Greensboro was considered a center of the southern textile industry, with large-scale factories producing denim, flannel, and overalls. The resulting prosperity was expressed in the construction of notable 20th-century civic architecture, including the Guilford County Courthouse, West Market Street United Methodist Church by S.W. Falk, several buildings designed by Frank A. Weston, and the Julius I. First building of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, designed by Orlo Epps. During the 20th century, Greensboro continued to increase in population and wealth. Grand commercial and civic buildings, many of which still stand today, were designed by local architects Charles Harmon and Harry Barton. Other notable industries became established in the city, including Vicks Chemical Co., Carolina Steel Corporation, and Pomona Terracotta Works. During the first 3 decades, Greensboro grew so rapidly that there was an acute worker housing shortage. Builders set a construction goal of 80 to 100 affordable housing units per year to provide homes for workers. Greensboro's real estate was considered the wonder of the state during the 1920s. Growth continued even through the Great Depression, as Greensboro attracted an estimated 200 new families per year to its population. The city earned a reputation as a well-planned community, with a strong emphasis on education, parks, and a profitable employment base. It has 2 major public research universities, North Carolina-owned U.S.State State University, a historically black college established in the late 19th century, and the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. During the height of the civil rights movement in the early 1960s, students from U.S.State were the major force in protests to achieve racial justice, desegregation of public facilities, and fair employment, beginning with the Greensboro Four, who sat in at the segregated lunch counter at Woolworth's in 1960 to gain service. The largest civil rights protests in North Carolina state history took place in Greensboro in May and June 1963. In the 21st century, the universities are leaders in new areas of research in high-tech and science, on which the city hopes to build a new economy. Wartime and post-war prosperity brought development and designs commissioned from nationally and internationally known architects. For instance, Walter Gropius, a leader of the German Bauhaus movement in the United States, designed a factory building in the city in 1944. Greensboro-based Ted Lowenstein designed projects throughout the region. Eduardo Catalano and George Matsumoto were hired for projects whose designs have challenged North Carolinians with modernist architectural concepts and forms. Civil rights movement in 1960. The Census Bureau reported Greensboro's population as 74.0% white and 25.8% black. As in the rest of the state, most blacks were still disenfranchised under state laws. Jim Crow laws and customs were in effect, and public facilities, including schools, were racially segregated by law. This was after the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Brown v. Board of Education that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. Facilities reserved for blacks were generally underfunded by the state and city governments, which were dominated by conservative white Democrats. In the post-war period, blacks pushed in North Carolina and across the South to regain the ability to exercise their constitutional rights as citizens. College students from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College, a historically black college, made Greensboro a center of protests and change. On February 1, 1960, 4 black college students sat down at an all-white Woolworth's lunch counter and refused to leave after they were denied service. They had already purchased items in other parts of the store and kept the receipts. After being denied lunch service, they brought out the receipts, asking why the money was good everywhere else in the store but not at the lunch counter. Hundreds of supporters soon joined in this sit-in, which lasted several months. Such protests quickly spread across the South, ultimately leading to the desegregation of lunch counters and other facilities at Woolworths and other chains. Woolworths went out of business due to changes in 20th-century retail practices, but the original Woolworths lunch counter and stools are still in their original location. The former Woolworths building has been adapted as the International Civil Rights Center and Museum, which opened on February 1, 2010, the 50th anniversary of the sit-ins. The white business community acceded to the desegregation of Woolworths and made other minor concessions, but the civil rights movement had additional goals, holding protests in 1962 and 1963. In May and June 1963, the largest civil rights protest in North Carolina history took place in Greensboro. Protesters sought desegregation of public accommodations and economic and social justice, such as hiring policies based on merit rather than race. They also worked for the overdue integration of public schools. The U.S. Supreme Court had ruled in 1954 that segregation of public schools was unconstitutional. Each night more than 2,000 protesters marched through Greensboro's segregated Central Business District. William Thomas and A. Knight and Stanley, coordinators of Greensboro's local core chapter, invited Jesse Jackson, then an activist student at A&T, to join the protests. Jackson quickly rose to prominence as a student leader, becoming the public spokesman of the nonviolent protest movement, seeking to overwhelm city jails, as was done in protests led by Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. In Birmingham, Alabama, the protesters invited an arrest by violating segregation rules of local businesses. They were charged with trespassing and other non-violent actions. College and high school students constituted most of the protesters, and at one point approximately 1,400 blacks were jailed in the city of Greensboro. The scale of protests disrupted the business community and challenged the leadership of the mayor and Governor Terry Sanford. Finally, the city and business community responded with further desegregation of public facilities, reformed hiring policies in city government, and commitments to progress by both Greensboro's mayor and Governor Sanford. Sanford declared, "Anyone who hasn't received this message doesn't understand human nature." Significant changes in race relations still came at a painfully slow pace, and the verbal commitments from white leadership in 1963 were not implemented in substantial ways. Dudley High School A&T protests. In May 1969, students of James B. Dudley High School were outraged when the administration refused to let a popular candidate run for student union class president, allegedly due to his membership in Youth for the Unity of Black Society. After their appeals to the school were rejected, the students asked activists at North Carolina A&T State University for support in a protest. Protests escalated, and after students at A&T had thrown rocks at police, they returned on May 21 armed with tear gas canisters, using this against the crowds. The uprising grew larger, and the governor ordered the National Guard to back up local police. After there were exchanges of gunfire, the governor ordered the National Guard into the A&T campus, in what was described at the time as the most massive armed assault ever made against an American university. The National Guard swept the college dormitories, taking hundreds of students into protective custody. The demonstrations were suppressed. The disturbances were investigated by the North Carolina State Advisory Committee to the United States Commission on Civil Rights. Its 1970 report concluded that the National Guard invasion was a reckless action as it was disproportionate to the danger posed by student protests. It criticized local community leaders for failing to respond adequately to the Dudley High School's students when the issues first arose. They declared it a sad commentary that the only group in the community who would take the Dudley students seriously were the students at A&T State University. Greensboro massacre. While making progress, African Americans in Greensboro continued to suffer acts of prejudice. On November 3, 1979, members of the Communist Workers' Party held an anti-Ku Klux Klan rally in the Black Morningside Heights neighborhood. It was covered by 4 local TV news stations. During the protest, 2 cars containing KKK supporters arrived. A CWP organizer fired a pistol and protesters beat the Klan cars with sticks. The KKK responded with shooting and killing 5 demonstrators and wounding 7. Television footage of the actions was shown nationwide and around the world, and the event became known as the Greensboro Massacre. In November 1980, 6 KKK defendants were each acquitted in a state criminal trial by an all-white jury after a week of deliberations. Families of those killed and injured in the attack filed a civil suit against the city and police department for failure to protect the black citizens. In 1985, a jury in this case found 5 police officers and 2 other individuals liable for $350,000 in damages. The monies were to be paid to the Greensboro Justice Fund, established to prosecute such cases to advance civil rights. Geography. According to the United States Census Bureau, the city has a total area of 109.2 square miles, of which 104.7 square miles of it is land and 4.5 square miles of it is water. Greensboro is located among the rolling hills of North Carolina's Piedmont, situated midway between the state's Blue Ridge and Great Smoky Mountains to the west and the Atlantic beaches and Outer Banks to the east. The view of the city from its highest building, the Lincoln Financial Tower, shows an expanse of shade trees in the city. Interstates 40 and 85 intersect at the city, and the planned I-73 is to pass through its borders. Downtown area. Downtown Greensboro has attracted development investment in recent years with such new construction as Yadkin Bank Park, and residential and offices. The South Side neighborhood downtown exemplifies Central City reinvestment. The formerly economically depressed neighborhood has been redeveloped as an award-winning neo-traditional style neighborhood featuring walkability, compact blocks and local amenities and services. Downtown Greensboro has an active nightlife with numerous nightclubs, bars and restaurants. The redevelopment of the downtown was stimulated by the 2006 opening of the Elon University School of Law. The law school is credited with attracting student dollars to the downtown both day and night. Four Seasons Coliseum area of the Four Seasons Town Center is a 3-story shopping mall with 1,141,000 square feet of shopping space that was developed by the Couri Corporation. Located at 410 Four Seasons Town Center, it is adjacent to the Kouri Convention Center and Sheraton Hotel, boasting over 250,000 square feet of flexible meeting space. The Joseph S. Kouri Convention Center is the largest convention center in the Southeast between Atlanta, Georgia and Washington, D.C. The hotel has more than 1,000 rooms. The Greensboro Coliseum is located at 1921 Westgate City Boulevard. This multi-purpose complex consists of the 22,000-seat Greensboro Coliseum, 2,400-seat War Memorial Auditorium, 300-seat Odeon Theater, and the 167,000-square-foot Special Events Center, which includes 3 exhibition halls, a 4,500-seat mini arena and 8 meeting rooms. The 30,000-square-foot pavilion is located adjacent. The Coliseum's website notes the complex hosts a broad range of activities, including athletic events, cultural arts, concerts, theater, educational activities, fairs, exhibits, and public and private events of all kinds, including conventions, convocations, and trade and consumer shows. Airport area. In 1998, FedEx built a $300 million mid-Atlantic air cargo and sorting hub at Piedmont Triad International Airport. Following an intensive competition for the hub among other regions of the state, as well as locations in South Carolina, the project was challenged in court based on the quality of planned noise and pollution abatements from neighborhoods near the planned hub site. The hub opened in 2009. Originally projected by FedEx to employ 750 people in its first 2 years of operation and eventually 1,500. Local FedEx employment has been nearly the same as before the facility was constructed. In March 2015, Honda Jet, with a manufacturing facility in Greensboro, announced that it had received provisional type certification from the United States Federal Aviation Administration. This achievement indicates the FAA's approval of the Honda Jet design based on certification testing, design reviews, and analyses completed to date. Climate. Greensboro, like much of the southeastern United States, has a humid subtropical climate, with 4 distinct seasons. Winters are short and generally cool, with a January daily average of 38.9 degrees Fahrenheit. On average, there are 75 nights per year that drop to or below freezing, and 4.3 days that fail to rise above freezing. Measurable snowfall occurs nearly every winter, and accumulates to a normal of 7.5 inches. Usually in January and February and occasionally December and March. The actual amount may vary considerably from winter to winter. Cold air damming can facilitate freezing rain, often making it a more pressing concern than snow. Summers are hot and humid, with a daily average in July of 78.5 degrees Fahrenheit. There is an average 32 days per year with highs at or above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, but, as in much of the Piedmont South, 100 degrees Fahrenheit plus readings are uncommon. Autumn is similar to spring in temperature but has fewer days of rainfall and less total rainfall. Extremes in temperature have ranged from -8 degrees Fahrenheit on January 21, 1985 up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit as recently as July 17, 1914. Thunderstorms are common during the humid spring and summer months, some being severe. On April 2, 1936, at around 7 p.m., a large F4 tornado cut a 7-mile swath of destruction through southern Greensboro. 14 people were killed and 144 were injured from the tornado, which moved through part of downtown. The storm was part of an outbreak known as the 1936 Caudal Greensboro tornado outbreak. Strong tornadoes have struck the Greensboro area since then, notably Stoneville on March 20, 1998, Clemens and Winston-Salem on May 5, 1989, Clemens and Greensboro on May 7, 2008, and High Point on March 28, 2010. Demographics. As of the census of 2010, there were 269,666 people, 124,074 households, and 53,958 families residing in the city. The population density was 2,138.3 people per square mile. There were 99,305 housing units at an average density of 948.4 per square mile. The racial composition of the city was 48.4% white, 40.6% black or African American, 4.0% Asian American, 0.5% Native American, 0.1% Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, 2.08% some other race, and 2.6% two or more races. Non-Hispanic whites were 45.6% of the population in 2010, compared to 70.9% in 1970. People of Hispanic or Latino heritage, who may be of any race, were 7.5% of the population. Of the estimated 92,394 households in the city in 2000, 27.5% included children under the age of 18, 39.8% were married couples living together, 14.6% had a female householder with no husband present, and 41.6% were classified as non-family. Of the total households, 32.6% were composed of individuals, while 8.7% reported someone living alone who was 65 years of age or older. The average household size was 2.30 persons, and the average family size was 2.94 persons. The age distribution in 2000 was 22.3% under the age of 18, 14.1% from 18 to 24, 31.6% from 25 to 44, 20.2% from 45 to 64, and 11.9% who were 65 years of age or older. The median age was 33 years. For every 100 females there were 89.2 males. For every 100 females age 18 and over, there were 85.6 males. The median income for a household in the city in 2000 was $39,661, and the median income for a family was $50,192. Males had a median income of $34,681 versus $26,797 for females. The per capita income for the city was $22,986. About 8.6% of families and 19.3% of the population in 2000 were living below the poverty line, including 25.8% of those under age 18 and 10.6% of those age 65 or over. Religion in Greensboro. 48.33% of the population is religiously affiliated. The largest religion in Greensboro is Christianity, with the most affiliates being either Baptist or Methodist. The remaining Christian populations are Presbyterian, Roman Catholic, Pentecostal, Episcopalian, Latter-day Saints, Lutheran, and other Christian denominations including Greek Orthodox, Quaker, Moravian, Church of Christ, and non-denominational. After Christianity, the largest religion in Greensboro is Islam, followed by Judaism. Eastern religions make up the minority in Greensboro.